Hi there, this is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. And today we're joined with AJ Mizes. He is a career coach, a leadership development coach, and HR consultant. Welcome to the show, AJ.
Thanks, Dennis. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And now I forget from our first call, where are you located?
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I actually live in the East Bay in a little town called Orinda.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I've been to San Francisco a lot and towns around that area, but I don't think I've ever visited that town.
It's a pretty small town. We're about 10 minutes east of Oakland, if that helps put it on a map.
Okay, yes, I've been to Oakland several times. So tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe starting off with some of your kind of career history, as I like to start, to help build up into, what you're doing today. And I always like to talk about the why. I think that's very important, getting down to the why we get up every day and do what we do and work all the crazy hours as entrepreneurs and so forth. So take it away. Share a little bit of your history with us.
I'm happy to. Thanks for asking. So I started my career in sales, actually, and I graduated during the recession. And I couldn't find a job that I wanted to work in because nobody was hiring. And the only roles that were hiring were sales roles. And so I had some experience working in luxury sport resort companies, and I got a job as a salesperson and selling high-end memberships to different properties on the Western Seaboard. And after about 6 months of doing the sales role, I realized that sales was not for me. I was really good at it. I was always on the leaderboard, if not the top sales rep at the company, but it didn't fulfill me. I didn't like starting at zero every month. And that just wasn't something that fueled me. What fueled me was connecting with people and building operations and working with others. And at that point, that's kind of all I knew I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do sales. So I met with our VP, general manager of the property I was at, and there was an assistant general manager position opening. I applied to the role and gave her a presentation on what I thought I could do for that property. And here's little AJ after college, and I got the job as an assistant general manager of one of the largest properties, hospitality properties on the Western Seaboard. I supported 500 associates. I was in charge of everything front of house, and I ended up really transforming how that property operated and some of the recognition that we were getting for the service we were providing, the types of things that we were doing, the events we were producing, the engagement we were producing. And I eventually moved into a learning and development role where I was teaching leaders and managers across 9 different properties on the Western Seaboard on how to do exactly what I did in my property. So that kind of threw me into the world of HR, and I loved it. It was a really awesome opportunity. And I wanted to get into tech. I was living in the Bay Area, and of course that was the predominant industry here in the area, but I didn't have any tech experience. So through a series of networking and meeting with folks, I ended up at Premier, which is a staffing and recruiting firm here in the Bay Area, where I was recruiting for very, very well-known tech companies in the Bay Area. I was there for about 3.5 years, ended up being a leader of a team as a managing director. And one of my clients at Premier then hired me to be the VP of people engagement in Oakland at a solar software company. And so I led people teams and collaborated with learning and development, and oversaw people engagement, talent acquisition, kind of the whole kit and caboodle in people. Had a great mentor there who really taught me a lot of my foundational knowledge within HR. And then I landed at Facebook, and I was at Sungevity for 3.5 years. I then went to Facebook. I was there for almost 4 years. I was a global HR leader there for a group of 3,000 people globally. and got to lead a team and was, launched leadership development programs. And it was the genesis for really what I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life, is leading people. And the cool thing about how Facebook has their role set up in HR is that 80% of my job was being a coach to leaders, a coach to individual contributors. And so in my last year at Facebook, I really started getting this itch to start my own company and to do this on a more broad scale. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to own my own company. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad, my grandpa, everybody had their own companies at some point. And I launched the Human Reach about 4 months ago, and it's just been on a rocket ship ever since. I'm working with a lot of great companies in San Francisco, a lot of one-on-one private clients, and things like leadership development, career strategy, culture building. And I do this work because I believe that if you have great leaders, high tides raise all boats, and it all starts with leaders. And so for me, if I can work directly with the folks that create the experience for everybody at the company, we're making big impact.
Well, absolutely. And I've used that analogy, which is a great one. We rise together, essentially. And, a really bad person in a management role can really disenfranchise and infect, those around them. And really an employee of any level can do that. But I really liked what you said there about having a mentor early on. And, that's one of the reasons why on OutBüro.com, I put in the ability for people to indicate that they're willing to be a mentor or they're seeking a mentor, and in what areas, because that is so critical. And I do believe also in the LGBT community, having someone who you can be your full authentic self with, whether they are LGBT or just an open ally, but you can share your whole self and they know really who you are, and create a real collaboration and a two-way street. Because also in a mentor situation, it's not just a one-way benefit, right? The mentor, in the classical role of mentor, should also be getting some value out of the relationship with the mentee. Whether that's, a new perspective, maybe some technology, input, and so forth. So I really like that you either sought out or happened to, stumble upon a mentor early on, and that's part of what you focus on.
Yeah, it's having I would not be where I am today without mentors, and specifically without two in my life that have been very, very pivotal, very supportive, incredibly insightful, very guiding, and knew how to complement my strengths and feed me things that I needed to have in my Rolodex so that I would be successful in the world of leadership and HR. So
gotcha.
I'm a huge proponent of mentors.
And one of the other things that I've kind of noted in your story, which I see a lot of, is, careers can, oftentimes people will just right out of college or just out of necessity, take a job because they just need the income, right? They'll take any job. I've been there myself, but, you really need to think a little bit more strategically. Because in my early days, my father used to get so my dad had worked for 3 companies his whole life, and I was in technology. So, I would be working at a company, but once I got to a certain point and I didn't see any additional knowledge to be gained or upward mobility to challenge myself, I was on to the next thing. And that was generally, for me in my early career, every 18 to 24 months, I was changing companies. or going to work for a consulting firm where I had different clients, every 6 to 12 months to challenge myself. And one, I hate stagnation, and I hate doing rudimentary things constantly, and it bores me to tears. I always want to be challenged. But so many people don't necessarily think like that. And they just kind of take whatever's posted on one of the job boards and apply. And so let's talk a little bit, because I know it's part of your strategy and your coaching, on thinking about your career in a strategic perspective.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And you're right. There's kind of like these two different schools of thought. Like, do I stay at a company and continue growing, or do I change when things are getting stagnant? I'll tell you, my husband has worked at his company for 17 years. And I am one of those people who have changed roles probably every 3 or 4 years or so. So it just depends on a lot of different things: the size of the organization, the types of work that you get to do. I call it what makes your feet tingle when you wake up in the morning, because you get to go do that thing. And the statistic is that 70% of the job force is looking for a job right now, are looking for a new job. So if you think about it, there's a lot of people who are thinking about changing their roles and doing different work, working with a different organization for a different mission, for different values, et cetera. And so you have to have a strategy in terms of what you're doing. Now, what I will say is there is a difference between having experience versus experiences. And if you are changing careers, and if you're changing what you're doing in your life, a lot of the things that my private clients tell me is, well, I don't have any experience in XYZ industry. Well, I'm the perfect example of someone who literally changed industries and changed roles several times without any experience in said industry. I was the one who used my experiences, my intents, my values to change those roles. And so what you have to do, and an example that I'll give is, I was working with a private client who was a salesperson. So front end, generating leads, closing leads, et cetera. And she really wanted to work in post sales, so account management and making clients happy and upselling. And one of the things that she was experiencing was, I don't have any account management experience. I've never managed the relationship post sale. But what we found out is, one of the things that this company was looking for is the ability to work with unhappy customers and turn it around to a positive relationship. Well, she never worked with customers. She worked with prospects. And so we started thinking about, okay, well, what experiences had she had that where she was dealing with unhappy prospects, and how could she talk about the system by which she used to turn around an unhappy prospect into a happy prospect, and how would that parlay into working with unhappy customers? And she ended up getting the role. So there's lots of synergies between what's required of you in a new position, and you just have to do the work to find those experiences to do so.
I like that story. Because when you are looking to make a major shift in your career, you do have to really, at that point, tailor your resume and really think about, how does what I have done translate to benefit and value to the new organization and that new role. And handling difficult clients and turning them around is a skill. It's actually one that I was very known for. I used to be called the paratrooper.
Oh, there you go. You parachute in, turn it around.
Oh yeah, boy, yeah. If I took clients who, when I was working for a consulting firm, who were on the brink of not renewing contracts, and telling that company to basically, bye-bye, and walking in and just building that rapport and going through the contracts and being honest with both the customer and the company, to where where I had to tell the company, look, you, according to the contract, you have not performed on this, and this, and this. So they have just cause, and this is what we need to do to fix it. And, having what I find in those situations is just the honest communication, the willingness to take responsibility, and the willingness to take
Mm-hmm.
charge. So, so you do this career coaching. Let's talk about, if you would, maybe a little bit of your process.
Yeah.
So, if I was a client coming to you and saying, you know, COVID has hit, not many people, there's less jobs out there, I'm of a certain age, um, out gay male, all over my LinkedIn profile, just, but, what are the kinds of things that you do when you're working with a new prospective candidate client?
Yeah.
And how do you walk them through the process?
So the very first thing that we do is we make sure that what we're going for is not what I call a shadow career. And what that means is that you're doing work that you love doing, and you're not doing just a little bit of it just to get a paycheck. Because what'll happen is you start to get stagnant, you don't make changes, you find yourself all of a sudden in a huge role doing things that you weren't meant to be doing with your life. So the way that we do that, one of the ways, is by going back to look at what brought you joy as a kid. And what are those things that just immediately spark awe and interest, in looking to see how those things parlay into what you're doing as an adult. So that's the very first thing. I also have my clients take an assessment to understand how to talk about their strengths. It's called Standout. Very different from Myers-Briggs or any of those other things that you might have done in the past. And it does two things. One, it confirms what you already know about yourself, and that can be really, really powerful. And the second thing is that it gives you some other nomenclature, vernacular to use as you're talking about yourself during interviews, about your skills, about your strengths, about what value that you bring. And so once we do all of that work up front, that's then when we come up with your blueprint, what I call. And your blueprint is basically all of the work that we do to discover what makes your feet tingle, to confirm that you're in the right place, to know how to talk about your strengths, and gives us a North Star. What types of industries are we targeting? What types of roles are we targeting? What types of skills, your top 3 to 5 skills that you're going to bring to those different organizations? And then I have a whole team of writers that work with me to help redo your resume, LinkedIn, and cover letter for you. So we have a senior team of writers that help optimize your assets for LinkedIn and ATS systems and keyword searches, and get people to book a call with you. That's the only job of a resume. And you mentioned earlier, it's important to tailor your resume. I 100% agree with that. In fact, one of my favorite phrases is that you don't wear a bikini to a funeral. And so, or maybe you do, if that's your thing. And so we tailor your resume to the role that you're applying to, the types of roles. And then after that, I'm teaching you what I call the side door job application method. And what this means is you will not be just applying to jobs online. In fact, 80% of the job market are getting their jobs through referrals. And so I'm teaching you how to get into the side door and to skip all that mumbo jumbo on the application front and be a big fish in a small pond. So I teach you side door, and then we do interview prep and offer negotiations are typically our last 2 sessions. So soup to nuts support.
Awesome. And kind of in order there, while you were talking, you mentioned what did you enjoy as a kid? And I honestly had not ever thought about that, and how that relates to what I have done and do.
Ooh, tell me.
Yeah. So as a kid, my mother used to get so angry at me because I would always tear apart the toys because I wanted to know how they worked. And then I would try to put them back together again. And sometimes if I was young, that started at like 4 and 5 years old. And it stayed with me for quite a while. And what was interesting is now kind of overlaying that onto my past career is I used to help very large organizations understand their processes around managing and owning technology, hardware, software, intellectual property, contracts, etc. But it was in the early days of that. And it was always going in and doing discovery meetings, helping them break it apart. Break it apart. What do you do step by step? Who gets this? Who gets that? Why? Why? I was like a kid asking that all the time. And then we would re-engineer their processes, aligning them to best practices and implement a tool to support them. And with OutBüro it's kind of almost, it's based on, a foundation of a proven business model, but it's going in a new direction and kind of being a bit of a disruptor, basically tearing something apart and trying to give something new again. So very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. And on the whole building the side door thing, folks, got to do the props here. That's why it's so important also for all of you to not only join the OutBüro group on LinkedIn with us as of right now in February 2021, 46,800 global members. And we're talking some very high influential people in the group, very high. As well as students. Okay, so it ranges the full spectrum. But if you want connections in companies, let me tell you, the LinkedIn group is definitely it. But also joining OutBüro.com, where you have a professional profile, and it's like Glassdoor.com and LinkedIn. Met at a party, fell in love, and had a queer baby. So it's striving to be the essentially the LinkedIn for the LGBT community, because of course I don't control LinkedIn and they do lots of things that I don't like and even things I don't approve of, even in our group, like advertising without any approval or vetting of who's advertising in the group and so forth. But so I really like what you said about looking at your childhood, and it, yes, it doesn't mean I'm going to have a career of being a toy maker, but looking at what are the things of interest that you did, and trying to kind of see how that kind of overlays and how you maybe still are. And of course, if you are focusing on your own happiness and understanding who you are, as RuPaul says, honey, if you can't love yourself, who's going to love you, right?
That's right.
And, why be stuck in a job that you absolutely hate? I mean, if I hear someone constantly complaining about their job, especially if we're out having cocktails or something, I'm like, well, get a new fucking job. If you don't like it, right?
Yeah. And I deal with folks all the time who are so scared to make a change. And I get it. There's real concerns with making a change. There's the financial concerns. There's location. Do I have to move? I'm going to have a new boss. I'm going to have to learn to work with new people. All of those are really valid concerns. But here's what I know about fear. And you may know some of this too, Dennis, but the thing that prevents us from moving forward or taking a risk is the part of our brain that is programmed to avoid uncertainty, because we are avoiding things that I'm saying in air quotes that will kill us. And so one of the things that I talk to my clients all the time about is, what is the worst case scenario if you change jobs? The worst case scenario. And oftentimes they say, well, I won't like my boss, or, I won't like the people I work with. And I say, okay, so worst case scenario, what do you do? Well, I would try to repair things with my boss if that was an option, or the people that I work with, or I would just try to find another opportunity. I said, okay, so you're not going to die. This isn't going to kill you, right? And so your brain does this thing, it does it to all of us to avoid uncertainty and to avoid things that are quote unquote dangerous. But what I try to do with clients is it really dangerous, or is it just uncomfortable?
Yes, good point. And, although due to COVID, there has been, huge unemployment and so forth, but also new opportunities because, I get feeds all the time. And, one of them is, at home work opportunities. And literally just the other day, even for folks out there who, are still on the entry to mid level, there was a totally remote work from home job at like $29 an hour, which from working from home, that's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it was just data entry, but companies now, even large corporations, are moving, recognizing that, before COVID, there was this push that or pushback on working from home. So, they'd be like, oh, it's going to be productive, or there's going to be connectivity, and that osmosis of collaboration and so forth going on still. And so companies were fearful, as you pointed out, to allow their staff to work from home. But lo and behold, COVID forced that. And companies have seen, oh, this isn't actually so bad. It's not as bad as we thought. Productivity is still there. And we can now actually reach a larger talent pool. We don't just have to look in the Bay Area. And of course, numerous companies are vacating California due to tax laws and et cetera, moving to other states. Texas is a big one. But they're also very much more open to remote workers, maybe with a little bit of travel once restrictions and so forth kind of release. Have you seen any changes in kind of the talent acquisition strategies or the application candidate strategies that in our new paradigm?
Absolutely. In fact, Facebook was one of those companies that did not believe at one point that having folks work remotely was going to be productive, or we're going to have the same productivity, was going to be engaging, et cetera. And it really took this forced experiment of COVID to prove that folks can be just as productive, sometimes even more productive, when working in their home environment versus working in an office. And I will say there's some things that just aren't the same working remotely, right? Like collaborating and team workshops, and there's differences. And I think we as humans need that in-person human interaction. So I am excited for us to get back to work. But what I am seeing is that companies are being more tolerant over folks working remotely. And in fact, there's been something like a 60% increase in the amount of remote work jobs that are popping up in the job market right now, because folks are realizing that you don't have to be in an office 5 days a week in order to make things happen. So I'm noticing a big difference, I would say, and a lot of exodus out of California. There's a lot of folks who are moving to Texas, Colorado, Phoenix. And it is
DC, Oregon. Just read an article on that yesterday. I've seen it, but it was a pretty thorough article. And so for companies out there like me, myself, I used to travel 70 to 80% of my life for that past career. And so if I were on the job market as like right now, and I would be totally open to a job that allowed me to work from home 3 weeks out of the month and then travel if necessary to corporate headquarters for, those meetings that really need to be in person. But, so much more nowadays that people have been forced. Video conferencing like this has been around for a while. It's not new, but a benefit of COVID is that it has forced its normacy. And, like I used to do telephone calls with my group members to get to know some of them and so forth, and try to convince a few, to write articles, and so difficult. But now I rarely, seriously, in the last 6 to 8 months, I probably have had a traditional phone call. I'm not kidding, less than 5 times. I always do video conferencing. I find I get more out of it because it's like we're sitting in the same room for the most part. outside of our setups, right?
Mhm.
But we're able to still have the conversation, hear each other's voices, but also get that little bit of body language and feeling a little bit more personal than just a phone call. So neat. So, if you are out there and looking at careers, look at companies who are, open to remote work, as AJ indicated, a 60% increase in folks' job postings that are out there. So, so you have your candidate, consulting practice and helping them, hopefully land that job, that next job. And I liked what you stated, because that's how I've always stated it. Hearkening back to my mention of my father is, he would have not only worked in 3 companies. Yes, he changed roles a few times, but as I had to try to explain to him, Dad, this is technology. It's constantly changing. And if a company has invested, $3 million in this project, in this platform, when it's done, right? There's no new challenges. And so in technology, I have to go to where the next company or the next consulting practice is offering the next new thing or the next new ideas, because that's where I need to be. I said, Dad, it's like a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. I don't just want to look at this next job. I need to think about what this job I'm going for, how that's going to look on my resume and the skills that it's going to provide me, so that I can be thinking about the job after that. And I love that you communicated that on your website. So any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what creates the hyper competition within the tech market, is because there is so much evolution in technology. There's limitless opportunities and people inventing new things all the time, which makes the tech industry in itself, very exciting. And it has become the norm to change roles every, I'd say, 2 to 4 years. Within the tech company. In fact, at Facebook, we had the boomerang effect, which meant that people would leave Facebook because they were, done with the product they were working on, and they saw some shiny thing over here. They would go work on that product because it was really awesome, and then they'd come back to Facebook because there was a new product that Facebook was working on. So I think it's totally normal these days to make those changes. In fact, a lot of times it can help you one up the role that you're in, the level that you're in, the type of work that you're doing, and help pivot your career. So I encourage it. What I typically kind of throw a flag up for is anything less than a year. If you're changing jobs 12 months or less every year, there's probably something else going on besides a fancy new product that you want to go work on. So I typically say, at least give it a year.
Yes, sure. I would agree. And in different roles, the flip side is, to me, whenever I was hiring, because I was a director and then I owned a company in that consulting space that I used to do. But I used to also say, oh, wow, you were at that company for 9 years in the same role. Right? That
and the
really,
deduction that you make.
Yeah, you know that role really well. I would say there's kind of that, depending on what industry you're in, folks, right? But if you're in technology, if you're in the same role for 9 years, I question that. And I can guarantee talent acquisition recruiters question that too, because come on.
There's no progression. There's no, increase in responsibility. Yeah, there's probably some flags that are going up, or some questions that person has.
Right. So looking at someone's career is then also, the types of leadership roles and leadership challenges that they take. And so you also do leadership training, leadership coaching, and development. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, high tides raise all boats. I'm a firm believer in that. And I think the number one thing that a lot of startup companies get wrong, or even companies that have been around for a while, maybe this kind of just falls to the wayside, is forgetting to invest in the leadership and the managers that exist at your company, because they are the ones that are face to face with all of your people. And your leaders, first and foremost, in my book, have to be great coaches. And they have to be people who serve as not only mentor or not only guides in the work, but mentors in people's lives. And when you can build managers with that skill set of being a really great coach, so I'm talking helping people through change, helping people through getting times at bat or a seat at the table, delegation, inspirational leadership, just of a few skills, then you are building a really well-oiled machine. So I work with companies all over the world, actually, to do just that, either in workshop settings where there's multiple people in the room, to one-on-one private coaching, and all in the vein of improving in those areas. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. And that is definitely a skill. And, I think it's wonderful that your clients are recognizing that those are skills which can be learned, because just like being an entrepreneur, I use the example of Susie, the cosmetic dentist, in my thread of conversations. When she graduated from dentistry plastic surgery school, she wasn't taught to be an accountant, a social media guru, a lawyer and everything else. Yeah. And so, or HR, or office management, so pardon me. So, just like an entrepreneur who has fantastic skills at doing, that particular function, just because you happen to be a really great, software developer does not mean that you also, when given the opportunity to grow into a leadership position, perhaps managing a small team, just because you are a great software developer does not mean that you naturally have the leadership skills to be effective. And so I think it's really wonderful what you're doing, and helping companies provide the guidance, the training, and the mentorship to grow the talents and grow their skills, because, it's dealing with someone else's personal problems that you might have to as a manager. They might be going through a personal crisis, like COVID, dealing with an ill parent or an ill family member, or they might be going through divorce. They might be going through coming out to their family and being disowned by their family. I just have a friend in Fort Lauderdale that happened to, literally just this week. Mm-hmm. And so, that's going to affect that person at work. And, and then being able to recognize with that, empathize with it, coach with it, whatever that is. I think that's such a valuable skill. And also, as seeing that person as a whole person, and, again, recognizing those things. And again, those are skills that must be taught. Everyone isn't just born a leader, but certain, and they might not think that they have what it takes. But just like playing tennis, it's when you practice and when you learn the right techniques and you learn the right swings and so forth, you might not go off and play at a world championship at Wimbledon, but you'll be pretty good if you get proper coaching and you practice.
Yes.
So awesome. Now, and, as we kind of stated early, is you kind of have this very unique role. I've not talked with someone who is quite doing what you're doing, in that you are coaching candidates, you're coaching people within companies in their leadership skills, but you also have kind of an overarching HR consulting practice as part of your what I'll call your three pillars.
Yes, that's what I call them. You nailed it.
Awesome. So what do you do there, and how does that all fit in?
Yeah. So HR consulting really comes in a lot of different ways. I call it I call what I do the new brand of HR. So long gone are the days of the like old person sitting in an office with a sweater and processing paperwork, and the person that you turn in your time cards to, and the person that signs off on everything. HR has really evolved into being a coaching profession. And the best companies that I work with are ones that view HR as a coach, a true business partner. That's why you see the word HR BP or HR business partner everywhere. Is because they're now being looked at, HR people, as as a business partner, as a business consultant. And my love is not only looking at the DNA of a company, so things like mission, values, leadership, coaching, and those types of things, but also how they're building people practices within the business units, or the different products that they're building, or the different types of teams that are getting stood up. And so I work with clients on a lot of different things, on forming leadership teams and what the structure looks like, on hiring process. How do you make sure that you're delivering a really awesome candidate experience, executive leadership hiring, culture values, performance review process. How do we make sure that we are engaging everybody and rewarding people for their awesome performance throughout the year? What's the best practice to do that? So it's kind of like putting everything, those other two buckets, so executive and leadership coaching and career strategy, into like a bigger bucket within the HR consulting wheelhouse. And so I kind of look at HR as like the rainbow, if you will, and everything underneath is kind of what evolves from that. So your career strategy, leadership development. So yeah, that's what I do. I'm working with a lot of companies here in the Bay Area, Midwest, Dubai, London, all over the place.
Okay. And I imagine as part of that, does, kind of their diversity inclusion practice come up, and, kind of asking of guidance on how best to do that?
Absolutely. That's a huge component of what I do, and a big emphasis for companies right now, and rightfully should be. And it is not only about diversity and inclusion, but also equity. So making sure that there's equal opportunity for folks within the organization, outside of the organization, to, again, have equal opportunity to land a new job, to get promoted, to have seats at the table, to have times at bat. So not only is it making sure that we're diverse and that we are inclusive, but that there's equal opportunity and equity.
Okay. And what, if any, kind of, I know I'm throwing this, kind of just at you here on the fly, but out of your experience with working with these companies, is there any particular kind of common thread or a standout problem situation that that was resolved, hopefully, but that you might be able to share with our audience, in case there are people out there, watching or listening and going, oh, that's, the little bits what I need to do. And, oh, yes, I need to contact AJ to help us.
In terms of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, or?
Well, that could be a focus, but if another example pops out in the sphere of HR, brighter in your brain at the moment, that's completely fine.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of companies, this one company I was working for here in the States, rather young company. Everybody was, under 40 and about 50 people. So a complete startup culture. And they didn't really have a leadership philosophy, or how they were going to approach being leaders at the company, and specifically as it related to career growth. Career growth meaning how leaders were helping the folks that reported to them grow in their careers. And one of the things that I focus on with clients that are in that predicament is talking about, okay, well, what's the philosophy that we have about growth, and why is growth important, and understanding and building a set of criteria or values around why which is, I think, one of our shared favorite words, Dennis, why that's important to that company. And what we know about the best leaders and the best culture is that companies who invest in people's career growth outside of their performance as a look back, but are focused future facing on what people's careers could grow into, is that they're 9 times more likely to keep their people for longer periods of time and retain their employees. And so really what I helped that client do, and other clients like it, is understand that there's really 3 different types of ways that people can grow in their career. And when you think about it in these 3 buckets, it kind of demystifies it for folks who are curious about, where do I go in my career? There's 3 buckets. The first bucket is they grow in their role. So that means they grow in their level, they grow in their contribution. They're staying on the same team, maybe in the same role, but they love what they do and they just want to do more of it at a higher level. So growth in role. The second is become a people manager. So move from an individual contributor to that of leading people. And that requires a whole different skill set. And the other caveat on that is we want to make sure that we're not just promoting individual contributors to managers, because that is the next level. We want to separate out those 2 types of roles, because we want people in leadership roles who are really great leaders. So you can still elevate in your career as an IC without being a manager. And then the third bucket is that you want to change roles. So you want to do something different. You want to use your skills in a different way, or you want to use more of your skills. And work in a different capacity. So when managers and leaders can talk to their directs about those 3 different buckets, instead of their direct saying, I don't know what I want to do next, or I don't know, at least they can get into a direction. Do you want to grow in your role? Do you want to become a people manager, or do you want to change what you're doing? And that then helps start to narrow the funnel on how to develop folks. And so we worked to really teach that philosophy and get it ingrained, and then come up with a regular cadence about how we meet with with your folks to be forward looking in terms of a career direction.
Okay, wonderful. So you help them build the strategy, the tools, and the language, and the processes in around focusing on continued growth.
Yes.
And I think that's awesome. And it's so important, because if your people aren't growing, your company isn't growing, right?
Totally agree.
And if your people aren't growing and your company isn't growing and adapting, guess what, sugar britches? You're going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to be out of business.
And it's going to be a slow, painful death. So just don't even go there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So very, very good. Love that. Love what you're doing. Thanks. And so, so how do people best reach out to you?
Yeah. So 2 different ways. If you're interested in kind of everything that I do, leadership development, HR consulting, you can check out thehumanreach.com. And if you are in a place where you're exploring a new career, but or maybe you are trying to change careers and you're running into some roadblocks, I can help. And you can visit findmydreamcareer.com to take my free web class.
Oh, free.
Free.
Love that word.
Yes.
Oh, well, great. Well, I know we are just about up here on time. Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share before I let you get on with your day?
Well, thank you again, Dennis, so much for having me. I think that's the first thing I'll say. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm a big fan of OutBüro, so it's nice to be on the other side in your podcast world. And then the other thing I say is just, you do you, and don't. One of the things that I was plagued, I would say, by when I was a younger version of myself was walking in the direction of my career because someone else told me I was good at something, or someone else told me I wouldn't like it. And what I've learned over the last decade plus is that it's not about what other people tell you that you're good at. It's a clue, but it's not all of that. And you have to do the work to really pay attention to your strengths, pay attention to what makes your feet tingle, and run towards that. Because if you can do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I know we probably hear that all the time, but it's true. It really is true. And you can have it all. It takes work and it takes action. So you can do it. And if you want some support, I can help you.
Awesome. Well, you kind of said something that hits on one of my phrases, and that is magic and miracles happen when you believe and you take action.
Yes.
So believe in yourself, form some ideas on where you want to go in your career, and start actually strategizing versus just floating through the wind.
Yes.
So if you would like a little bit of help, do check out those websites. We will have the links in the show notes, so be sure that you check those out. And love what you're doing, and the story that you shared with the small business, because I can see, as owning a couple of small businesses in my past and now, but I'm a company of one right now. Is, when you are a smaller team, you kind of think, oh, it's all just everybody's everybody. And, you really don't think about necessarily the leadership and the career paths of the teams, because you're also still in this startup mode of probably, less on strategy, more on, just getting shit done. Mm-hmm. and putting out fires. Mm-hmm. Versus really strategic thinking. But for those companies out there, use this as a pause button and set aside time every week in your calendar to think about strategy. That is strategy on your people, strategy on your business, strategy on your marketing, strategy on every facet of your business. And when you do that and you set that time out, think of it like your me time, versus your personal me time, which you need. I walk 4 miles every day. I meditate 30 minutes every day. And that's my me time. But you also need that in your business. Yes. So focusing especially on those small businesses as entrepreneurs, it can be one, tragically lonely. Mm-hmm. And long hours, but you need to focus and spend that time on your strategic thinking. And it can totally be out there. Like whenever I was first contemplating OutBüro, I was just out of a 17-year divorce. Mm. Was almost done rehabbing the house that I purchased after that. And I spent 3 months, and I'm a prior product manager, Scrum Master, and folks it's a product method. It's a project management methodology. It uses lots of Post-it notes and Sharpies. Okay? Yes. But so on my me time during thinking, what the fuck am I going to do with the rest of my life? I, for about 3 months, thinking, again, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? What am I doing with this LinkedIn group that now is 13 years old? And I don't own LinkedIn. I get no money from LinkedIn, right? So what I did is I sat down and took a break, and anywhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour, I, put the pillow on the living room floor, sat, kind of meditated, had, some really cool, music going on. But I had all of my Post-it notes because I was consciously trying to think about all the different things out there. And so every time I had an idea or there was something of interest, I wrote it on a single Post-it note. And then what's great about that, guys and gals and others and theys, is you then can just put that off to the side. It now can clear your brain and make way for new thoughts. You're not going to forget it. You've written it down. Then what you do is you go through after that, and also don't put judgment on those thoughts or those ideas. No idea is a bad idea. Okay, you never know what crazy crap you're going to write down on that Post-it note that could become the next big thing. So when you do that, is you go through and then you can lay it all out on the floor, or sticky notes go great on the wall. And you can arrange them, categorize them, group them together. Maybe one grouping is for your marketing strategy. Maybe one is for your HR and team development and leadership strategy. Maybe another one is for your product or your services category, new things, okay? And then after you categorize everything and you put all of those loose Post-it notes in a semblance of an order, you then go through and you kind of prioritize. You kind of begin to put things up at the top, move things down to the bottom. If something is redundant, because you might write something twice, I did that for 3 months, okay, before I started working on OutBüro. And so sometimes I'd see, oh, no, that's really like this. Okay, what's wonderful about a Post-it note? Crumple it up, throw it away. And then you can begin to go see, oh, this is my priorities. And then you can build out a larger thought around it. So just wanted to kind of give you some strategy for beginning to think about how to strategize, tools for strategizing. And you can even do that when planning or thinking about your career moves. Think about, sit down, quiet, not there's a quiet, throw in some, great music, whatever you like I did. Sit down. You don't have to get all frou-frou like I did, sitting in, lotus blossom, position. But, think about what's important to you. And I like what you said earlier is when you're thinking about that, write down some of the joys that you had as a kid, and then think about what you have been successful so far, put those down on paper, and maybe you'll see a connection like I did just spontaneously. Again, I'm being totally honest with you. I've never thought about that before. Mm-hmm. And I love that. So you can also do that same tools. Like, for an example, in my sessions with myself in building OutBüro, not only was I looking at what I wanted to do in building a community service that was also an income and also provided tools and resources, but I also put down, for example, I wanted it to be 100% internet based. I'm used to moving around. I'm used to traveling. I don't want to be geographically locked to a particular location because I have owned 2 small businesses that were all local based. And I got bored with that locale and wanted to move. Well, that meant that, oh my God, now I'm starting from scratch again, right? All those local customers I won't have in my new location. So that was one of my criteria for building OutBüro, is that it's internet based. If I meet because I'm single.
Ready to mingle.
And if I meet some hot guy from Italy, and I want to go visit for 3 months, I can do it and still do my business. So those are just I'm just giving you guys ideas, is that don't limit yourself on what you write down. Write what's important to you, or your goals, or what you think you might want to do, again, in your personal life, in your career, or in your business. Any thoughts on that?
I love that. Post-it notes are my favorite brainstorming activity. And in fact, if you don't have physical Post-it notes, you can use a free Google tool called Jamboard, which has Post-it notes and a like whiteboard. And I love using Post-it notes to brainstorm, especially in that regard, throwing every idea up on the wall, not throwing anything away, categorizing them, coming and looking at the clues between them. It's just such a great way to do it. So I'm a big fan.
And that's environmentally more friendly.
Yes.
Although Google creepy looking at everything that you do.
True.
There are other tools out there as well. I think I'm going to need to write an article about those type of tools and put links to them all as a separate article.
I'm here for it. I'll be the first reader.
Awesome. Well, AJ, I have so much enjoyed this conversation. You've given us really great ideas, tools. and a free resource on your website, which we will have links below to.
Yes, great. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much again for having me, Dennis.
Awesome. Well, again, likewise, appreciate your time and you coming on board today and sharing all this great information with our viewers. And we appreciate you for staying tuned to this episode, watching or viewing. While still here, go ahead and put some comments down below. What are some of your goals for your career, your business, or your HR strategies? We'll get AJ to perhaps come back and answer some of your questions. Wouldn't that be fun?
I'm here.
Awesome. And again, when you're looking to network, join the OutBüro group on LinkedIn, but definitely join outbureau.com because it's where you belong. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.